When it was first announced that Disney was buying Star Wars, there was a lot of excitement by most Star Wars fans. My first thought was, whatever they do has to be better than the prequels. I think most fans were also enthusiastic about Lucas appointing Kathleen Kennedy as president of Lucasfilm. After all, she was producer on most of Spielberg's films. It seemed like a good fit. But not long after this, things became concerning. She decanonized the beloved Expanded Universe, to the outrage of many Expanded Universe fans. She also seemed obsessed with making Star Wars a franchise with an 80% male audience into a franchise that would mainly appeal to women. In an interview with the New York Times, she said, "I have a responsibility to the company that I work with. I don't feel that I have a responsibility to cater in some way to those particular fans. I would never just seize on saying, well, this is a franchise that's appealed primarily to men for many, many years, and therefore I owe men something." There are also rumors that behind closed doors, she's frequently referred to hardcore Star Wars fans as those people. When The Force Awakens was released, many people were pleased with it, but some were not, and were concerned that it would only get worse. And when The Last Jedi came out, their fears about how worse it could get were undeniably realized. The film was so unpopular with a majority of Star Wars fans that it created a huge rift in the fanbase, pitting traditional Star Wars fans against Disney Star Wars stans. But the unfortunate reality of the situation was that even if Disney cared about what traditional Star Wars fans wanted, which is questionable to say the least, they couldn't remove Kennedy even if they wanted to. The terms of Kennedy's contract state that as long as each of the sequel films clears $1 billion each, she can't be fired. All three of these films did get past the $1 billion mark, but how much were these films expected to make? What the sequel trilogy was supposed to make. When the acquisition of Star Wars was announced in 2012, financial analysts made the following projections on how much the new trilogy would make. Episode 7, $2 billion. Episode 8, $2.5 billion. And Episode 9, $3 billion. So what did the sequel trilogy actually make? Episode 7, The Force Awakens, made $2.069 billion, just about meeting expectations. Episode 8, The Last Jedi, brought in $1.333 billion, only slightly more than half of what it was expected to bring in. And Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, just barely limping across that $1 billion finish line with $1.078 billion. So if we subtract the actual box office takes of these films from what Disney was expecting them to bring in, we can determine that Disney has lost $3.02 billion for Disney. If I'm Bob Chapek, I'm thinking Kennedy is Disney's greatest liability. Let's take a moment to go through the long list of times that Kennedy failed to do her job in ways that were very costly for Disney. The sequel trilogy. If, after The Force Awakens, we had seen Luke Skywalker portrayed in a manner that wasn't insulting, and if a plausible explanation had been presented for Rey's very overpowered Force abilities, it's very likely that the sequel films would have had box office takes much closer to the original projections. But instead, she hired Rian Johnson to helm the second film, and seemingly gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wanted with no regard for what the overall plan for the trilogy was. As a result, Johnson gleefully derailed all the major plot lines of the story, making it all but impossible to provide a satisfying end to the trilogy. Solo, a Star Wars story. Kennedy let filming reach 80% completion before she even looked at a single daily. And when she realized they didn't do it the way she wanted, she fired them. Then she hired one of Hollywood's most expensive directors to come in and basically remake the entire movie. This resulted in Solo, a Star Wars story, being the first film with Star Wars in the title to actually lose money. The Mandalorian. There are people that are fond of saying that Kennedy was the person that made The Mandalorian happen in the first place. In the book, The Art of the Mandalorian, Kennedy takes credit for bringing Favreau and Filoni together and facilitating the creation of the show. But the real story, according to Cameron Pasha, is that Favreau, having seen how unsatisfying The Force Awakens was, approached Iger and offered to fix Star Wars. And additionally, where was Kennedy on taking point on the Baby Yoda merchandise? The fact that there was none out when the show started is a clear indication that she was asleep at the wheel on that, and no doubt tens or even hundreds of millions more were lost. Then, when the show was at the peak of its popularity and hype was building for a spin-off, Rangers of the New Republic, she fires Gina Carano, who was the star in that spin-off, pretty much torpedoing that show and most of Favreau's future plans for Star Wars. So the question everyone should be asking, especially Bob Chapek, is this: how many billions of dollars can Kathleen Kennedy lose Disney before she is no longer unfireable? And the thing is, Kennedy is not just a financial liability to Disney, but also a liability to Disney's image. Disney wants to be seen as the gold standard in entertainment, but in recent years, they've increasingly been regarded as a soulless corporation that turns beloved franchises into cheap commodities just to turn out a quick buck. And right now, Kennedy can be argued to be the face of that. There may come a time when cooler heads prevail at Disney, and they decide that having someone like Kennedy around will have an unacceptable impact on not only their bottom line, but their legacy as well. We may find out the answer to that question in a few weeks, so stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe, and even do that thing with the bell. And remember, folks, no matter where you're going, there you are.